Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the ISS Hyperion, watching Neptune's blue surface shimmer in the distant sunlight. After 6 months of deep space exploration, their mission had been largely uneventful. Until now. "Captain, we're picking up something unusual." Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm system. "Large metallic object, approximately 3 kilometers in length. It's not one of ours." Chen's heart raced as she made her way to the bridge. Humanity had been searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence for centuries. Now, at the edge of their solar system, they might have finally found it. The bridge crew sat in tense silence as the Hyperion approached the object. Through the main viewport, they could see it clearly now. A massive vessel, its hull covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. It was definitely artificial, but its design defied conventional engineering logic. "No signs of active power signatures," reported Dr. Emily Wong, their xenotechnologist. "But the hull material, it's unlike anything in our database. The molecular structure appears to be in constant flux." "Life signs?" Chen asked, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "None detected, Captain. The vessel appears to be derelict." After conducting extensive scans and finding no immediate threats, Chen made the decision that would change humanity's future forever. "Prepare a boarding party. Full containment protocols. We're going to be the first humans to set foot on an alien ship." The boarding team consisted of Chen, Wong, and their head of security, Commander James Hassan. As their shuttle approached the vessel's hull, they could see the true scale of their discovery. The geometric patterns seemed to pulse with a faint bioluminescent glow. "Look at the craftsmanship," Wong whispered in awe. "This technology is centuries, maybe millennia beyond ours." They found an entry point, what appeared to be an airlock mechanism. Wong's universal interface device somehow managed to interface with the alien technology, and the massive door slid open with a sound that seemed to reverberate through their bones. The interior was even more bizarre than the exterior. The corridors seemed to bend in ways that shouldn't be possible, with surfaces that shifted between solid and transparent. Their helmet lights revealed walls covered in symbols that appeared to move when viewed from different angles. "The air composition is breathable," Hassan reported, checking his instruments. "Temperature is 15 degrees Celsius. No detected pathogens or harmful radiation." But something felt wrong. Chen had spent 15 years in space, and she developed an instinct for danger. The ship felt alive, somehow, as if it was watching them. They made their way deeper into the vessel, documenting everything with their suit cameras. The architecture became increasingly organic, with corridors that looked more like arteries than constructed passages. In what they assumed was the ship's control center, they found their first clue about what happened to the original crew. A large crystalline structure dominated the center of the room, its surface covered in the same shifting symbols they'd seen throughout the ship. As Wong approached to study it, the crystal suddenly pulsed with light. The symbols on the walls began to move more rapidly, and a low-frequency hum filled the air. "We need to leave," Chen ordered, but before they could move, the crystal projected a holographic message. The symbols transformed into English text before their eyes. "Quarantine protocol initiated. Containment breach DTHTD. Emergency transmission sent." The ship's systems began powering up around them, and Chen realized with horror that they hadn't found a derelict vessel. They'd found a trap, a quarantine station designed to capture and contain something. And they'd just set it free. "Back to the shuttle. Now," Chen shouted, but the corridors were already beginning to seal themselves off. The geometric patterns on the walls were now pulsing with bright light, and the hum had grown into a deafening roar. They barely made it back to their shuttle, the ship's hull now fully awakened behind them. As they rushed back to the Hyperion, Chen watched through the viewport as the alien vessel's surface began to crack, revealing a pulsing, organic core beneath its metallic skin. "Send an emergency transmission to Earth," Chen ordered as soon as they were aboard. Tell them. Tell them we found first contact, and we need to prepare for what comes next. The alien ship was now fully transformed, its original geometric beauty replaced by something organic and terrifying. As the Hyperion prepared for emergency faster-than-light jump back to Earth, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't just discovered evidence of alien life. The return journey to Earth took 3 weeks, but for Captain Chen and her crew, each moment felt like an eternity. The Hyperion's quantum communications array had been broadcasting their warning since they left Neptune's orbit, but the response from Earth was not what they had expected. Instead of panic, the world's governments responded with calculated precision. By the time the Hyperion reached lunar orbit, the planet had already begun to mobilize. The International Space Defense Coalition, dormant since its formation decades ago, had been activated. They're detecting similar vessels appearing at the edges of other star systems, Dr. Wong explained during their debriefing at Lunar Command. The holographic display showed dozens of red dots appearing across the local star cluster. Whatever we awakened, it's not an isolated incident. The assembled military and scientific leaders watched in silence as Wong played back the sensor data from their encounter. The way the alien ship had transformed from geometric precision to organic chaos haunted their dreams, but it was the signal that followed that truly terrified them. The signal had begun as soon as they jumped away from Neptune. A repeating pattern of mathematical constants, broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't have been possible through normal space. At first, they thought it was a distress call or a warning. The truth was far worse. It's not broadcasting to anyone, Wong continued, her voice trembling slightly. It's broadcasting to everything. The signal is changing the quantum state of space itself, like ripples in a pond, and something is responding. Deep space monitoring stations had detected movement in the void between stars. Massive objects, previously hidden, were beginning to stir. The quarantine station they'd discovered hadn't been designed to keep something out. It had been designed to keep something in. Something that had been sleeping in our solar system since before humanity learned to make fire. Commander Hassan stepped forward, displaying tactical readouts from military satellites. We're detecting changes in the quantum field surrounding Earth. The signal is affecting our technology, but not in the way we expected. It's improving it. He demonstrated by activating a prototype defense shield. The energy field that formed was unlike anything they'd seen before, incorporating patterns similar to those they'd observed on the alien vessel. Their technology was evolving, adapting to face the coming threat. This is why they left the quarantine station, Chen realized, speaking for the first time since the briefing began. They knew we'd find it eventually. They knew we'd set it free. But they also knew it would force us to evolve. The room erupted in discussion, but Chen's attention was drawn to a new alert from the Hyperion's eye. The ship's systems, still partially integrated with the alien technology they'd encountered, had decoded more of the signal's mathematical pattern. It wasn't just a beacon, it was a blueprint. Hidden within the mathematical constants were designs for weapons, shields, and engines that operated on principles humanity had barely begun to theorize about. The quarantine station hadn't just been a prison. It had been a library, waiting for a species advanced enough to find it and desperate enough to use what they found. But they weren't the only ones receiving the signal. Deep space telescopes detected massive energy signatures from nearby star systems. Other civilizations, hidden and unknown, were responding to the call. Humanity wasn't alone in the galaxy, but their first steps into the galactic community would be through a baptism of fire. We need to move faster, Chen announced, interrupting the ongoing debate. Whatever's coming, it's not just heading for Earth. Every civilization that receives this signal is about to face the same threat. We're not just fighting for our survival anymore. We're fighting for the survival of everyone who isn't ready for what's about to emerge from the void. The quantum communications array detected a new signal, stronger than the first. This one didn't carry blueprints or mathematical constants. It carried images, thousands of them, showing worlds throughout the galaxy. Worlds that had once been inhabited, now empty and lifeless. And in the background of each image, barely visible but unmistakable, were shapes that defied description. Living geometric patterns that shifted and changed, consuming everything in their path. "They're not just coming," Wong whispered, studying the images. "They're hungry." As if in response, every electronic device on Earth flickered simultaneously. When they came back online, they all displayed the same message, translated into every human language. "The Quarantine is broken. The Sci-Fi is awaken. Prepare or perish." The architects hadn't just left them weapons and technology. They'd left them a chance to become something more. The quantum changes affecting human technology weren't random mutations. They were guided evolution, preparing humanity for a role the architects had chosen for them millennia ago. As the first joint species defense fleet assembled in orbit, Chen couldn't help but wonder if they were living up to that ancient trust. The entities stirring in the void were getting closer, and estimates gave them less than a week before first contact. But looking at the quantum disruptor, at the evolved cities below, at the children playing with abilities that would have seemed godlike just days ago, she felt something she hadn't expected: hope. Humanity had spent its entire existence looking up at the stars, wondering if they were alone. Now they knew the truth. They weren't alone. But more importantly, they weren't afraid. Whatever emerged from the void would find not the primitive species that had been imprisoned, but something new, something ready. The joint species fleet assembled in Earth's orbit was unlike anything humanity had imagined possible. Vessels of every size and configuration formed a defensive sphere around the planet, their designs as varied as the species that created them. The Nexus had contributed massive living ships that seemed to be grown rather than built. The collective of Tkai had sent crystalline vessels that bent light around them. And at the center of it all hung humanity's contribution, the newly completed Prometheus array. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship Hyperion Iva, now upgraded with technology that made its predecessor look like a stone axe compared to a fusion reactor. Dr. Wong and Commander Hassan flanked her, their neural interfaces allowing them to process the massive amount of tactical data streaming through the fleet's quantum network. "The void entities will emerge in approximately 6 hours," Wong reported, her eyes flickering with quantum data. "The Nexus's predictions align with ours. They'll appear simultaneously across all targeted systems. And we still don't know what they want," Hassan asked, though he already knew the answer. "To feed," Chen said simply. The images from the signal had made that clear enough. "But we've learned something new about them. Something that gives us an advantage." The main display activated, showing a simulation based on their analysis of the quarantine station's data. The void entities weren't just hungry, they were afraid. The architects hadn't imprisoned them out of cruelty or convenience. They'd done it because the entities were running from something even they feared. "Look at their pattern of consumption," Wong explained, highlighting certain data points. "They don't just devour worlds, they convert them. Each planet they consume adds to their mass, their energy. They're building something, preparing for something." "But they made a mistake," Chen continued. "They assumed we'd react like the other species they'd encountered. They expected us to run, to hide, to try to imprison them again. They didn't expect us to understand their fear." The fleet's quantum network pulsed with new data as the Nexus ships detected the first signs of the void's rupture. The space between stars began to twist, reality itself buckling under the pressure of something massive forcing its way through. "All ships, battle positions," Chen ordered, her voice carrying across the quantum network to every vessel in the fleet. "Remember the plan. We're not here to fight them. We're here to show them a better way." The Prometheus array activated, its massive rings beginning to spin. It wasn't a weapon, though it could have been. Instead, it was humanity's greatest achievement, a device capable of harnessing the same fundamental forces the void entities used to traverse space. The first entity emerged exactly as predicted, its form a writhing mass of geometric patterns and organic matter that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. It was beautiful in its horror, a thing that shouldn't exist in normal space but somehow did. More followed, dozens of them, their combined mass greater than Earth's moon. They moved with purpose, their patterns shifting and realigning as they assessed the fleet before them. "They're preparing to attack," Hassan warned, but Chen raised her hand. "Not yet. Wait for it." The void entities surged forward, their patterns becoming more aggressive, more predatory. But just as they reached the fleet's outer perimeter, the Prometheus array activated. Reality curved. Space itself seemed to fold, and for a moment, everyone in the fleet felt what the void entities felt, the terror of something vast and hungry pursuing them across the cosmos, something that made them seem small in comparison. The entities recoiled, their patterns shifting from aggression to confusion. The Prometheus array wasn't just showing them their own fear, it was offering them an alternative. "Now," Chen ordered, and the fleet moved as one. The Nexus ships extended fields of living energy. The EXA vessels refracted space-time through their crystalline hulls, and humanity's ships, led by the Hyperion II, activated their quantum disruptors, not to destroy, but to communicate. The message they sent wasn't in words or mathematics, but in the fundamental language of reality itself. "You don't have to run. You don't have to feed. We can help you face what's coming." For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, nothing happened. The void entities hung in space, their patterns shifting and changing as they processed this unprecedented response to their presence. Then, slowly, their geometric patterns began to align with the Prometheus array's energy signature. They weren't surrendering, but they were listening. For the first time since they'd been imprisoned by the architects, someone was offering them something other than fear or force. "It's working," Wang whispered, watching the quantum readings stabilize. "They're actually considering it." But before Chen could respond, every quantum sensor in the fleet lit up with warnings. Something else was emerging from the void, something far larger than the entities they'd been prepared for. And this time, it wasn't running from anything. It was hunting. The thing that emerged from the void defied description. If the entities they'd faced before were geometry given life, this was mathematics gone mad. A vast, churning mass of impossibility that made the laws of physics scream in protest. The sensors that tried to analyze it simply shut down, unable to process what they were detecting. "By all the stars," someone whispered over the quantum network. The voice belonged to the Nexus commander, their usual crystalline tones shaking with fear. Captain Chen watched as the void entities they'd just been confronting changed their formation. Their geometric patterns shifted from communication to defense, arranging themselves between the fleet and the cosmic horror that pursued them. "They're protecting us," Dr. Wang realized, her neural interface struggling to process the quantum readings. "They know we can't survive what's coming." But Chen had seen something in that brief moment of communication through the Prometheus array, something that gave her an idea. "No," she said, her voice carrying across the quantum network to all ships, both alien and void entity alike. "They're not protecting us. They're showing us what we need to do." The void entities had spent eons running, consuming worlds to gain the energy needed to stay ahead of their pursuer. But in doing so, they'd learned something about it, something they'd just shared through their quantum resonance with the Prometheus array. "It's a harvester," Chen explained, watching the massive entity approach. The architects didn't just imprison the void entities to protect other species. They were trying to prevent this thing from feeding on them. It consumes advanced civilizations, grows stronger with each one it absorbs. Commander Hassan's tactical display showed the harvester's approach vector. "Then we've just given it exactly what it wants, a buffet of advanced species all in one place." "No," Chen said, a plan forming in her mind. "We've given it something it's never encountered before, unity." The quantum network hummed with understanding as Chen shared her plan. The void entities had been running for so long they'd forgotten there was another option. Humanity, with its brief but intense history of overcoming seemingly impossible odds, saw what they couldn't. All ships, initialize quantum synchronization. Chen ordered. Prometheus Array, prepare for full spectrum resonance. We're going to show this thing what happens when its food fights back. The fleet moved with perfect coordination, ships of every species finding their place in a pattern that mirrored the geometric formations of the void entities. The Prometheus Array's rings began to spin faster, its energy signature harmonizing with both the fleet and the entities that had once been their enemies. The Harvester seemed to hesitate, sensing something different about this prey. Its vast form rippled with patterns of its own, patterns of consumption and dissolution that had unmade countless civilizations. But it had never faced anything like this. The void entities struck first, their geometric patterns aligning with the Prometheus Array to create a resonance cascade that warped space itself. The Nexus ships added their living energy to the matrix, while the HFY vessels refracted and amplified the effect through their crystalline hulls. And humanity, the youngest species present, provided the key insight that made it all work. The quantum disruptors, originally designed to communicate with the void entities, were reversed. Instead of reaching out, they reached in, destabilizing the Harvester's complex mathematical structure. "It's working," Wang shouted, watching the quantum readings spike. "Its pattern is breaking down." The Harvester retaliated, sending waves of cosmic horror that threatened to unravel reality itself. Ships began to fail, their crews experiencing nightmares that bled into reality. But they held formation, each species contributing its strength to the whole. Then Chen saw it, the flaw in the Harvester's pattern. The same flaw that existed in all beings that survived by consuming others. It didn't understand cooperation, couldn't comprehend the idea of separate species working as one. Now, Chen ordered, and every ship in the fleet, every void entity, every piece of technology they'd assembled fired as one. The Prometheus Array channeled their combined energy into a single point, not to destroy the Harvester, but to change it. The quantum resonance reached a crescendo. Space itself seemed to hold its breath. And in that moment, the Harvester experienced something entirely new: transformation. Its vast form shuddered, its patterns of consumption and destruction breaking apart and reforming into something else. The energy it had absorbed from countless civilizations was released, but not as destruction. Instead, it became possibility. The combined knowledge and potential of every species it had consumed, now free to spread across the galaxy. As the light faded and the quantum readings returned to normal, the fleet faced not a cosmic horror, but a new form of existence. The Harvester had become a repository, a library of all the civilizations it had absorbed, now accessible to those who remained. The void entity's patterns shifted one final time, not in fear or hunger, but in what could only be described as peace. They had found what they'd been running toward all along: a way to exist without consuming, to learn without destroying. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the Hyperion II, watching as the combined fleet began to disperse. The void entities would remain near Earth for now, working with humans to unlock the knowledge within the transformed Harvester. The Nexus and Taisi ships would return to their worlds, carrying the story of what they'd achieved together. "Did we just save the galaxy?" Hassan asked, still processing what they'd witnessed. "No," Chen replied, a smile forming on her face. "We just showed it a better way to exist, and we did it the most human way possible, by refusing to accept that something was impossible." The quantum network hummed with messages from a dozen species, all expressing variations of the same sentiment. Humanity had proved itself worthy of the Architect's trust, not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they could see possibilities where others saw only threats. As the Hyperion II set course for Earth, Chen thought about how far they'd come since finding that first quarantine station. They'd faced cosmic horror and emerged not just intact, but transformed. Humanity had taken its place among the stars not through conquest or submission, but by doing what they did best: adapting, innovating, and refusing to give up. The void entities had learned to exist without consuming. The harvester had been transformed from destroyer to preserver. And humanity. They'd learned perhaps the most important lesson of all, that the universe's greatest horrors could be overcome not through force alone, but through understanding, cooperation, and the unwavering belief that there was always another way. The stars seemed brighter somehow as they headed home, full of not just possibility, but promise.